And that's right, everybody. Welcome back once again to another edition of the Best Seat in the House podcast. As always, I'm your host, Rob Kramer, joined by my co-host, the great Daniel Bobo Curlin. And Dan, as you're locked in on your phone right there, no doubt tweeting out our link to the show tonight. How you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing good. It's a little crazy. It's just a little crazy. Freaking but messed up 2 nights in a row. Freaking, I want to just freaking be want to put Mendoza on the Shizer list. Both times should have went with Diaz. Freaking,
Very true.
freaking, David Stearns can't sign a starting pitcher that can throw more than 5 innings.
Yeah, man. There is definitely a lot to get into tonight. We're coming off the NFL draft last week where the Giants made headlines. The Jets made a pretty good pick, so we'll be breaking that down a little bit. Obviously, the Mets ran into a brick wall in the form of the Arizona Diamondbacks over the last 2 days, and we're not able to get out of their way. Yankees had a tough time in Baltimore. We're talking about that. And then obviously some Rangers news and notes, potentially closing in on a new head coach. And of course, the New York Knicks and the Detroit Pistons in a pivotal Game 6 tonight.
Oh, by the way, breaking news: Joel Micheletti is retiring.
Yeah, we're going to be getting into that when we talk Rangers. And yes, you are correct, my friend. Sad news, although very classy job by Joe not announcing it until after this the season, so it didn't not that it would have overlapped or run down Sam Rosen's farewell tour, but no reason to share the spotlight. Very, very classy move by Joe, and we'll be getting into all that in a sec. Right before we get into the start, though, we are live on X, we're live on Twitch, and we're live on YouTube right now. So anywhere you guys see, jump in if you can. Want to say hello to our buddy Mick E, who jumped in right here and said hello, Daniel, and hi, Rob. So hi, Mick. Thanks for joining us tonight in the chat, and we appreciate everybody hanging out with us here on this Thursday evening. And Dan, there we go, the executive producer, Grimace, joining us here. And Dan, before we get into anything else, too, yesterday was your birthday. You're coming off, you were at Citi Field yesterday. How was your birthday yesterday? You have a good time?
Aside from the outcome, it was fine. I got this neat little gift here. I want to show you. I want to show you this neat little gift I got here. This little thing here. This is like a little thing that it has like like a passport. Like a little stamp from each stadium you've been to.
Yeah,
nice little thing. I was gifted by my sister.
Very cool. Very nice.
I'm sure you heard about these things, right?
Yeah, I've seen those. Those are very cool. I also actually have a poster here where you use like a coin to scratch off each stadium that you've been to. So it's pretty cool they come up with these little things to commemorate all the different stadiums you've been to.
Yeah, not only that, they could even send you updated pages like when a team moves to a new stadium. Like in a couple of years, like this one, currently has the stadium that the A's play I'm sorry about Oakland. I mean Sacramento, Vegas, whatever. Soon to be Vegas A's. I'm going to call them. Like it lists. It lists the Vegas. Vegas currently has in a temporary stadium in Sacramento. It lists that stadium as their stadium, their page. But when they move to like the new stadium, they'll have the page for the appropriate stadium you could order.
Yeah, the homeless A's, they're pretty much right now as
yep, exactly.
They don't have a long-term home at the moment.
Yeah, they're not listing the Tampa Bay Rays in the Steinbrenner Field right now because that's like a 1-year situation. I think I hear next year they're moving back. They're going to be able to return to the Trop next year, so they didn't have a page for that, but
it's ridiculous. By the way, before we get into all this stuff, Dan, how ridiculous is it right now that we have two major league teams playing in minor league stadiums, the A's and the Rays? That is just ridiculous.
Yeah, that is just ridiculous how they freaking have to sort that one out. Of course, but of course that one's blame the both parties and both team situations, both parties being in pissing contests that can't resolve a deal because they can't resolve a deal on who's funding how much who's putting what funding into the stadium. So the fans are losing, and those fans of both fan bases are lost in those situations, and they've lost in Oakland pretty much. They pretty much lost in Oakland.
Yeah, you can't blame the Oakland fans for being disillusioned there with that team. So yeah, definitely, Dan. A sad state of affairs for those two teams, but good news: our team doesn't have to worry about that crap, as both those teams don't really, you know, impact the Mets that much. But speaking of the Mets, let's get right into that, Dan. As it's been a great start to this season so far. However, the Mets, and it was bound to happen. You're not going to win every game. The Mets finally lost a home series. This one to the Diamondbacks, which started out great. It started out like, you know, uh, just like many of these homestands have, where the Mets were hitting the crap out of the ball. They won 8-3 after the road trip wrapped up in Washington on Monday afternoon, where they blew out the Nationals 19-5. But they went out and scored 8 runs the next day, but over the next 2 games, they only scored 5 runs. They scored 3 runs yesterday in the 4-3 loss, and then ended up only scoring 2 today. So just very, very inconsistent hitting so far from this team. And the thing that really, really caught my eye, especially in this series, but it reared its ugly head multiple times over the weekend in Washington too, is Carlos Mendoza just making terrible, terrible pitching decisions. I mean, we have now seen he has put Ryan Stanek, and look, I don't want to, make this a punching, contest with Ryan Stanek, because I think overall he's a good player. He's an asset to that bullpen. He came up very big in the postseason multiple times for the Mets last year. But right now, for whatever reason, he's not producing. So don't put him in spots where he's going to be directly impacting the game. Last Friday, we had a little injury scare with Edwin Diaz. Mendoza wanted to not go with him, so he put Stanek in there against the Nationals. Stanek would promptly blow the game, and the Mets would take the L on that one. Edwin Diaz would then come out and pitch a scoreless 9th inning in a 2-0 win on Saturday. Then on Sunday, for reasons known only to Carlos Mendoza, in another save spot, puts Ryan Stanek out there, implodes, and blows it again. Just infuriating stuff. So the Mets blow out the Nationals on Monday, come back home, win on Tuesday. Wednesday now we're at. Ryan Stanek in again. It's a little earlier this time, but it's a 1-0 game. Why, after he blew 2 games over the weekend in Washington against a team with a much worse offense than the Arizona Diamondbacks, who, by the way, have the best offense in baseball, not just this year, not just last year, but over the last 3 years, the Arizona Diamondbacks are the top offense in baseball. And in a 1-0 game, you put Ryan Stanek back out there again? Like I said, I don't want to crap all over Ryan Stanek, but what is Mendoza thinking? You have to ease this guy back in. And I get we're going to talk about the slew of injuries they're dealing with in the bullpen in a sec, but Dan, if you're going to be trying to win this game, I'm putting anybody out there except Ryan Stanek. Oh, sorry, Dan. Hold on a sec. There we go.
Yeah, just such stupidity in the way they manage the bullpen. I'm just starting to it's just starting to become a major headache. And at this point, they're probably just going to bring in kitchen sink at this point.
I mean, they might as well, with everything that they've been dealing with so far. It's been ridiculous. There are a couple of things too where the Mets have been getting away with a lot. But other thing too, Senga today goes out there, 87 pitches over 4 innings. I know we saw Senga today. He was not at his best. Senga did not have his good stuff today. That happens every once in a while. But when the bullpen is as taxed as it is, and by the way, I heard people talking about in the beginning of the season, this is the best Mets bullpen ever assembled. Now, even at the time, I thought they were high when they were talking about that. But to even sit here and say a month later that this is the best bullpen Mets have ever assembled, you're out of your mind. You probably never watched the teams in the 80s or the late 90s, or the team that, in my opinion, had the best bullpen ever for any Mets team is probably the 2006 Mets. That bullpen was incredible. When you look at guys like Bradford and Wagner and Feliciano and, Dwayner Sanchez before he went out at 1 o'clock in the morning to go get food, and got into a taxi cab accident and ended his season. When you look at this Mets bullpen, it's not very good. Reed Garrett makes me nervous every time he comes out. And I don't care. He had a decent end of the season last year. He had a decent beginning to the season this year. But there's enough evidence with Reed Garrett that he's not trustworthy, 100% at least. I wouldn't say that he is in, as they say, the circle of trust. Not for me, at least. And then they take Senga out today, and you put in Genesis Cabrera, who stinks. The guy had a terrible spring training. He has not been getting anybody out in AAA, and that's the first guy you go to? Do you want to win this game? You went out and you stuck Genesis Cabrera, and then obviously he went to Max Kranick. Hey, even though Max Kranick threw one bad pitch and allowed the home run, you can't kill him for it. Max Kranick had another good outing. You should have gone to Max before Genesis Cabrera. This guy should not even be on the team right now. It's an absolute joke. And then at the very end, he decides to use Joe Adcock. You used a combination in the ninth inning of Reed Garrett, who started his second inning, which you got through the eighth inning with Reed Garrett. Why are you going to push him into the ninth? He's not a two-inning pitcher, most of the time at least. And then you take him out and you put in Joe Adcock in a one-run game. Or I forget if it was two, whatever it was at that point. I'm pretty sure it was a one-run game. Why would you not have Edwin Diaz in to keep it close? And he did the same thing the other night, on Wednesday night, when he took a 2-1 game. And because of his refusal to put Edwin Diaz into the ninth inning, they allowed 2 runs on 2 BS sac flies that turned a 2-1 deficit into a 4-1 deficit, and they ended up losing the game. And that's all on Carlos Mendoza. They put up the runs in the ninth inning that would have won the game if you had a competent bullpen that could hold them. But instead, you went out there and you tried this cute bullshit that blew up in your face. Carlos Mendoza really has to wake up because, yeah, I know it's early, and yeah, I know the Mets are off to a good start, but Atlanta is going to start heating up at some point. Philadelphia is a good team. You can't be blowing games like this, especially against good teams like the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, exactly. Can't freaking keep doing this. Wake the fuck up.
Yeah. So were you as annoyed at his not using Edwin Diaz as I was? Because that was driving me crazy. I know some Met fans aren't crazy about Diaz, but he's the best reliever the Mets have, bar none.
Yeah, exactly. He's the best reliever, and more times than not, he gets the job done.
Yeah. So I just don't understand it.
Yeah, I don't understand. I was furious. I mean, I'm sorry if my sister saw me maybe cursing up a storm a little bit at that game, but that's I am at that game. I'm not the day about that game, all right? She went with me to that game, and believe me, I was cursing up a storm that time at that moment, sitting in these insanely close seats because the Mets do this reward. They have this little rewards thing, like Mets Connect on the ballpark app. Like you accumulate reward points for each thing, like spend at the stadium or, spend on tickets, whatever, based on the face value of the ticket, reward points. And sometimes you get these things that they don't even use up any reward points, these free ticket coupons. One of those, because from last year, I used for the game on the 30th.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. For these tickets that were free, I was sitting in these seats that were a lot closer than where I normally sit on my birthday.
Yeah, and you got a front row seat of Edwin Diaz not appearing in the game, and Carlos Mendoza basically just saying to Torey Lovello and the Diamondbacks, here, we won the first game. We're off to a really good start. We don't want to win the next two games. Please beat us the last 2 days because we don't need it. We don't want it. That's how it felt like Carlos Mendoza. And I know it's ridiculous to even say that, but as a Met fan that, look, there's a difference between wanting to win every game and, going crazy with every loss and everything to being like, to just sitting here and being like, how have you used Edwin Diaz once in the last week? Once. I mean, it's ridiculous. There have been 4 or 5 spots you could have put the guy in that would have changed the game and tilted the situation in the Mets' favor, and he's chosen not to do it every time. I just don't get it.
Yeah, I just don't freaking get Mendoza. He's freaking cost us the game, and it just pretty much led to me yelling out, "Nice game, pretty boy."
Exactly. And it's not even June 15th, 1987 or whatever. I think June 15th.
Yeah, you know the funny part. You know the funny part about that fictional game that they describe in that Seinfeld episode never actually happened.
Oh yeah, I know.
You. I'm guessing you've actually did the same thing. Looked up the actual game that happened on that day, and realized it was against a completely different opponent. What was mentioned in the episode, even the outcome of the game is different than what was said in that episode. The Mets actually won that game. The Mets actually won that game that day. Some people were smart enough to Google that game on Baseball Reference.
That's the sickness of me and Dan as Met fans, that we even said to ourselves, gee, I wonder if the Mets actually beat the Phillies that day. Let's check it, or lost to the Phillies that day. Let's check it out. And yeah, that is true. We both did it. And the Mets did not play the Phillies on that fateful day that Newman and Cramer say they were in the stadium. But let's keep it rolling, Dan, here. Let's before we get to the really good thing that at least happened today with the Mets, we do have to cover some of these injuries that are starting to pile up in the Mets bullpen, Dan. We found out that AJ Minter, not in good shape right now. This is a guy that has a lat problem. I don't know if they're calling it a strain or what it is right now, but he was supposed to be the Mets' big lefty coming out of the pen, something they really needed from last year. And him going down, this is why it's even crazier to me with Mendoza's reluctance to go to Diaz, because all his other options are dropping like flies. You have Minter out for the foreseeable future. Who even knows when or if we're going to see him again this year? If he has to have surgery on his lat, it's May 1st. He's done for the year. We're not going to see him. If he has to have surgery on that lat, he is done. And it's the same thing with Danny Young. Danny Young, who's a lefty in the bullpen, I'm not even crazy about, but you got to give the kid credit. He actually had a couple of decent outings before this injury popped up. And now they're even saying that he, too, could possibly be done for the season. So the Mets' 2 lefties that made the team out of camp are in danger of being gone for the year. And now we've got this absolute stiff Genesis Cabrera on the team who's just taking up space. Hopefully he's gone by the time things resume tomorrow when the Mets are going to be heading to St. Louis to start this road trip. But, the Mets got to figure this thing out right now, Dan, because with those 2 guys out, there's a big hole in that bullpen, especially on the left-handed side. And for the bullpen news that is good, though, too, the Mets just came to an agreement the other day with free agent lefty, former Met from the last couple of years, Brooks Raley. Brooks Raley, I believe, is coming off Tommy John or something like that. He had a injury last year that kept him out all season, and he's just starting to get back to the mound right now. They're saying that maybe we could see, at the earliest, we'll be seeing Brooks Raley some point in June. So the Mets going to have to find out a way to patch things together for the next month, because there's nobody really coming in unless David Stearns turns around and pulls off a big trade.
Yeah, exactly. They need to do something. And then another thing I said before, during the offseason, David Stearns needs to pull off a trade for maybe some starting pitching. I just feel like the thing that has
starting pitching, you're not going to be getting anything until July, the earliest. And the other thing too, Dan, is a guy that we've talked about, Sandy Alcantara. I don't know if you've been watching him, but Sandy Alcantara has gotten smacked around this year. His ERA is over 6. He was just in the game the other day that they got blown out by the Dodgers, and Sandy Alcantara not off to a good start.
So that one looks like it's just going to be a big bust. And then I don't even know how Luis Castillo is doing.
Yeah, Castillo's okay. I actually have him on my fantasy team, so I've been keeping tabs on Luis Castillo. He's been okay, but the Mariners have not played great ball, and Castillo's been so, which isn't the worst thing either. Maybe if the Mets are going to trade for him, they could get him at a more reasonable rate, because I do think his numbers are just kind of slewed a little bit because of the Mariners not playing great. But either way, the big thing on the menu right now for the Mets is bullpen help, because as much as me and you might not be crazy about their rotation, these guys are actually pitching. They're not pitching deep into games, which is affecting the bullpen negatively, but they are pitching well. Griffin Canning has been very well. He's got an ERA just about 3, and he gives you pretty much 5 innings, maybe 1 run every time out. Kodai Senga's been very good until he struggled today a little bit, but still his ERA is 1.86. The Mets are getting a lot of good innings out of their bullpen. They're just not. Out of their starting rotation. They're just not going deep into the game. And what that tells me is that I think the Mets are going to really be in the market for a couple of big time relief pitchers at the deadline, or hopefully even before that.
Yeah, I feel that's another big thing. Another thing is to keep a watchful eye out is Brendan Sprout, who is I forget how he's doing lately.
Yeah, Sprout's been okay. He had another decent start the other day. I think he went 6 innings, 1 run. So he's still throwing pretty good. So Sprout is still on track that I expect him to pop up. I don't think he's going to be here and he's going to make 10 to 15 starts or anything. But I think we will be seeing him at some point this year for at least a couple of starts to fill in. But the other good thing, Dan, is that today we saw the wake up of Juan Soto hitting his first 2 home runs at Citi Field. It's just a shame that Soto goes out there and hits 2 opposite field home runs. It's crazy to you see his strength. The first one didn't look like it was going to get out, and it did. The second one was a bomb. The second one, he didn't have to think about it. He just dropped the bat and ran to the bases. But seeing Juan Soto start to come around a little bit, hit the 2 home runs today, contribute to the offense. He didn't really do too much the first 2 games of this Arizona series, but he had a really good weekend series against his former team, the Nationals. So maybe we're starting to see Juan Soto come out of this early season slump, and hopefully him hitting his first 2 Citi Field home runs today was a big step in that direction, right?
Yeah, exactly. I expect to see that. I expect to see the Mets step into the right direction and win and go on nice little winning streak. They got a win. They win 2, so the winning streak. It's happened before, and it could happen again. They're just quoting the line from Major League 2.
Exactly, man. And hey, they're in a good spot still. And this, like we said too, they were gonna lose a home series eventually. You're not gonna win 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4 every single series.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a tough series eventually, especially against a really good team like the Arizona Diamondbacks. And the good thing for the Mets is that they're not going to have to be playing a very good team the next time around. They're going to be playing the St. Louis Cardinals, a team they're 4-0 against this year after a 4-game sweep at Citi Field about a week ago. And they're going to be taking on Sonny Gray in the opening game of this thing tomorrow night. Clay Holmes going against Sonny Gray. Pretty good matchup to kick things off, right, Dan?
Yeah, exactly. I expect big things there, and I'll be watching it there in my living room, of course. And of course, surprisingly, I noticed that when yesterday's game, the Mets snapped that undefeated streak of the Mets being undefeated this year when I was in attendance.
Yeah, unfortunately that ended, but that's the same thing. You go to enough games a year where eventually they're going to lose one. So that does stink. They ended up losing, especially on your birthday. But hey, at least you still got a winning record, and that's the main thing. So we'll keep the Mets rolling along here. With that, Dan, I think let's turn our attention out of the Yankees for a little bit before we wrap up on the baseball here. And the Yankees spent the last couple of days in Baltimore, where they dropped 2 out of 3. They lost game 1, came back and fought and won game 2, but were not able to hold on and win game 3. Aaron Judge hit a 2-run home run in the first inning, but Carlos Carrasco, who, me and you as Met fans, we've seen the good and we've seen the bad of Carlos Carrasco, went and gave 4 right back in the bottom of that inning, and you just kind of knew that it was going to be tough for the Yankees to shake that off and end up winning that one. But Aaron Judge, man, just continues to tear it up. Even in the loss, the guy went 3 for 3, a home run, drove in 3 of the 4 Yankee runs. He is hitting 427. 427. We're a month into the season. That's like Ty Cobb and Roger Hornsby type numbers. I mean, this is dead ball era type batting average numbers that Aaron Judge is putting up right now, Dan. It's absolutely insane what this guy has done. It's one thing to put up his numbers and hit, like he did last year, hit 300, 320, whatever he's doing. He's hitting 420. It's like a video game. This is insane.
Yeah, that's it. That's just insane, and he just did that right now, but it wasn't enough, and the Yankees are having pitching woes in their rotation.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say their rotation is probably the thing they have to worry about the least. They do have a pretty good rotation for the most part. Their bullpen, they did have Devin Williams, their off-season prize acquisition, already lose his closer's job and have an ERA over 12 so far this season. So that's definitely a big issue for them. But luckily for them, they could always fall back on Mark Leiter Jr. and Luke Weaver, who have both been really good in the Yankees bullpen so far. So they got that going for them. Their starting rotation, pretty good, but the rest of their lineup outside of Aaron Judge is just not doing anything. Paul Goldschmidt obviously has been very good so far, but he's not hitting for the power the Yankees need him to. Now, he did add a home run yesterday, only his second as a Yankee. So he needs to start, being that backup to Judge more, especially from a power aspect. Aaron Judge, it looks like he could do it himself. I mean, look at these numbers. It's ridiculous. 427, 10 home runs, 32 RBIs. The guy is a cheat code. That's what they call it. He's the game genie. He comes out there and he does things that you should not be able to do. And we got to give Aaron Judge credit for that, if anything else, right, Dan?
Yeah, we got to give credit for that. That's one of the few things that isn't becoming a flaw with the Yankees. But it's becoming a thing, and the Yankees look like they could have tough competition in Boston. They're creeping up right on them.
Yeah, I mean, right now the Orioles, who the Yankees lost 2 out of 3 to, are currently in last place in the American League East. They're 12-18 after that great season they had last year. So not off to a great start for the Orioles. The Yankees are 18-13. So the Yankees, too, even though they're in first place, the Orioles are in last. They're only 5.5 out. So the American League East is still pretty damn close. But just like you said, Dan, the Red Sox are right on their heels, 17-15. So they really haven't gotten off to a hot start either. But they're only a game and a half out of first place. So they could definitely turn it up at any time. And the Yankees are going to keep things in the AL East this weekend, as well as Tampa Bay comes in to the Bronx. Yankees return home. And Ryan, I forget how you pronounce his last name, Pepiot, however you say it, Pepiot. He is 2-2 to 4.24 ERA. taking on the Yankees' new stopper, who's taken over that spot for Garrett Cole this year as he faces Tommy John surgery. Max Fried has been everything the Yankees could have wanted and more this year, Dan. 5-0, 1.19 ERA, and after a tough series in Baltimore, the Yankees need Fried to come home and set the tone more than anything.
Yeah, exactly. They need Free to step up against this team that can be a pesky team during especially during the stretch runs when you're facing these teams that are bottom feeders. They're even more pesky during the stretch run.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And Tampa Bay, I wouldn't necessarily call them a bottom feeder right now. They're once again they're even ahead of the Orioles. They're 14-17, 4 games behind the Yankees. But you're right. On paper, they should be a bottom feeder compared to the Yankees. So we'll see how that all plays out. Yankees going to be leaning heavily on their new free agent acquisition in Max Fried tomorrow night at Yankee Stadium. Now, Dan, let's shift our attention to a little hockey before we wrap. Well, actually, we'll wrap up with the NFL draft. So we'll get to the hockey first, go to the basketball after that. Dan, you mentioned it earlier when we first started. Joe Micheletti has announced his retirement from the booth after 19 years with MSG. He came in 2006, replacing the great JD, John Davidson, former Ranger goalie, who was there for about 20 years as well. I was very fond of Joe Micheletti. I thought Joe called a great game, but for some reason, I felt like a lot of Rangers fans never really gave him the love that he deserved. He's a great broadcaster, and I'm going to be sad to see him go.
Yeah, exactly. I thought he was a great broadcaster. I think he just had the unfortunate thing of trying to fill in for the big shoes of John Davison, which was
Yeah.
it was people grew accustomed to that legendary pairing of JD and Sam and JD. They just had that chemistry in the way they just injected all that humor and stuff. So it was just kind of a thing that he was just always in the shadow of his predecessor.
That's true. That's true. It's definitely true to a very large extent. But farewell, Joe Micheletti. Us real Ranger fans have always been a fan of yours, and definitely sad to see you go. Going to be interesting to see who they decide to replace him with. I've heard people saying Steve Valiquette. I think Valley's more of a in-studio guy. Not anything against him. I think he does a really good job in studio, which is why I think it might be a mistake to move him anywhere else. But Dan, before we move on from this, is there anybody that you have in mind that would stick out that would be good for Kenny Albert's first partner?
I hear rumors potentially Ryan Callahan being his first partner.
Really? That would be interesting.
Yeah. I feel like they're going to lean toward in the directions of someone who's played hockey, and I feel like Ryan Callahan would be someone that might need to be considered, being the fact he's had that more recent experience in the NHL. That kind of gets a keen eye on how things are in this era of the NHL.
Well, you know what they could do actually, because that's a good point actually too. They could pick up Ryan Callahan at some point, but I wonder if they'll also think about maybe taking Dave Maloney out of the radio booth and putting him with his radio partner in Kenny Albert, and maybe if they do decide to bring Ryan Callahan in, start him off on the radio, let him, get his feet underneath him and let him get his feet wet and figure this thing out. And then maybe if they feel he's ready, bring him to the TV booth. Maybe something along those lines. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I feel that's another one that could be a possibility, bringing in Dave Maloney, because Kenny Alberts and Dave Maloney has been in the booth for quite a few years now, and are acclimated to each other and stuff. So I feel like that would be a easy transition for Kenny Albert from the radio booth to the big shoes of the TV booth, being in the booth with someone very familiar to him.
Yeah,
that's worked
exactly.
well.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that would be a interesting way to go there. And then finally on the Rangers, Dan, there is strong word coming out today. Vincent Mercogliano was tweeting it about it earlier. Elliot Friedman, the guy who always seems to be out in front of all the NHL stories, all reporting that the Rangers are pretty much expected by the end of this week to name former Pittsburgh Penguins head coach, two-time Stanley Cup champion, and former New York Rangers assistant coach under John Tortorella here about a decade ago, Mike Sullivan, taking over as the 38th head coach in franchise history. Now, if you look at it, Sullivan wasn't happy with the way things were going in Pittsburgh because they're kind of on a tear down level right now. So he wanted out of there. The other teams that wanted him was Chicago Blackhawks, that are also kind of in the middle of a rebuild. The Boston Bruins are probably the only other team he would have gone to coach. But the Bruins also are in kind of a rebuild right now. They just traded Brad Marchand and everything. They're kind of tearing everything down a little bit to try to build up again and get their young players back in. But it looks like this is a match made in heaven because the Rangers are still have, they're right in that window where this could still, you could turn things around very easily next year. If Chris Drury makes a couple of good moves and you bring in a good head coach like Mike Sullivan, the Rangers could be right back in the Eastern Conference Final next year if everything works out for them. So, Dan, when you hear everything that's been going on right now with this, what are your thoughts on Mike Sullivan potentially joining the Rangers as the head coach next year?
I think that is a big step up. I just feel like he would be the perfect he's definitely a really good candidate to be the Rangers head coach. I feel like he could get the most out of his players. I feel like he got the most out of these players, that when there was these huge expectations when they were building there at Pittsburgh around when they built around their star, they knew what they had, and they knew they had to get that. They knew they couldn't mess around with getting a championship. I feel he understands the assignment here. I feel like this is a perfect match that he's got it. He's coaching a team that's contending. I feel like at this point in his career, he's not one to really spend a long time on a rebuild, which I feel like that's a thing when you're the coach. You want when you're doing a multi-year rebuild, you want to have a coach that's going to be there for the long haul.
Yeah. Now the funny thing is that Dan, overall, are you positive about this hiring, or are you willing to go along with it but not that positive? Because from what I've heard a lot of Ranger fans talk about is they wanted a younger coach that's better with developing young players. But I just don't think that makes any sense right now. The Rangers have a core that is securely in their 30s when you look at guys like JT Miller and Chris Kreider and Mika Zibanejad and half their defense and most of the guys on this team. Sure, you got some of the younger guys like Alexis Lafreniere and a couple of these other younger players, but most of this team is late 20s, early 30s, and I think you kind of had to get a coach that fit that. And in Mike Sullivan, I think that is the right fit.
Yeah, I feel like he's the right fit, and I feel like also he has seemed to have a track record of being able to somehow fit in and inject these young players right correctly into the team. Also mixing some of these young guys in there.
Exactly. It's got to be a combination. I'm totally with you on that. And with that, let's turn our attention now to the Knicks, who, just as we're recording this right now, it's just after 7:45 here in New York. The Knicks and the Pistons tipped off just a couple of minutes ago in Detroit. Knicks currently lead 14-8 very early on in that game. So let's talk about what happened in the last game, Dan. Knicks come back to Madison Square Garden leading 3-1. They had a pretty good lead for most of this game. They looked like they were going to close Detroit out, but they just choked it out at the end. They ended up tying the game, and just all fell apart for them after that. They lose the game 106-103. Now game 6 in Detroit tonight, which we're talking about right now. That's going on at the current moment. But Dan, losing that game was just very difficult, and there's a lot of criticism going around of head coach Tom Thibodeau for the way that he used his timeouts at the end of game 5, specifically talking about the injuries and needing to take them out of Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart, that not having them in for the final minute and a half, 2 minutes of the game really helped sink the Knicks more than anything. What are your thoughts on his management of the game at the end there?
Yeah, I think he's mismanaged Brunson a little bit. Maybe if there's any point he needed to have Brunson in there, it was late in the game, and that was a mistake for not bringing Brunson in there, especially in the fourth quarter when you do not want to burn out in the fourth quarter, and that's what happened yet again.
Well, it's not that he didn't have it in. It's just that they had to take Brunson out because of that injury. Which, by the way, did you see that injury, Dan? That Brunson, when he kind of I had the video on X, but for some reason they won't let me pull the video off. So I don't want to put it on here and get my channel, get our channel stricken or anything. So I figured I'd just describe it rather than that. But you could clearly see Jalen Brunson steps on the floor at Madison Square Garden. It's not like we're even talking about some other shitty arena the Knicks just happened to be playing in. This is at Madison Square Garden. He steps on the floor, and you could tell it clearly dents in when it's like something was warped underneath. The wood was warped or whatever, and it clearly dented in when Brunson stepped on it, which caused him to hyperextend his leg and hurt that ankle that he's already dealing with the injury. Man, Madison Square Garden better step up their game because we can't have our floor hurting our own players.
Yeah, they better step up this game. They better step up their game before Brunson gets hurt even worse. I'm gonna who's ever in charge of the floors of the Garden, someone put them on the Shizer list because they are going cheap, and when you go cheap on that, it's a disaster. I am shocked the Garden would go cheap on that. I would expect them to have very higher standards for an NBA franchise. Have higher standards on a hardwood floor.
Yeah, and we understand that there is complications when you have ice underneath the basketball court, so they got to constantly move things around, and I'm sure there are maintenance upkeep that you have to really be on top of to keep these things at the highest level they could possibly be. But when you're looking at a guy like especially a guy like Jalen Brunson, who is the most important player on this team, and he's among the highest paid player now. Like this is almost a $50 million a year mistake that the Knicks could screw themselves out of if they don't make sure the upkeep on the court is 1,000% effective, because you can't have this thing wearing down and you can't be hurting your own players, especially in the playoffs. It's one thing if this happens in November and everybody's mad about it, but if it happens in Game 5 of the playoffs, everybody's going to be having smoke come out of their ears, and rightfully so.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna put the people in the charge of maintenance at Madison Square Garden on the Shizer list for this.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And even if it's not their fault, somebody's got to get blamed for it.
Yeah, exactly. And I expect better. I'd expect better standards for Madison Square Garden in terms of maintaining a court.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely think that. You'd think that they'd have the best upkeep in not only the NBA, but I mean, it's the most famous arena in the world. So just very disappointing to see it go down like that. But unfortunately, that's what we had to deal with, and now we're looking at a situation at the end of as the series draws on. We're playing Game 6 tonight, and Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart are both battling injuries already. Remember we were talking about this last year against the Pacers when this Knicks team was very beat up and battling injuries, and they just eventually just kind of ran out of gas there and lost to the Pacers in Game 7. You can't have the team getting this beat up against a team that should be much inferior to the Knicks. I mean, the Pistons are a improved team. They're a decent team. They're a competitive team. You got to give them credit. But the New York Knicks are one of the better teams in the NBA. And, it shouldn't take that much to beat the Pistons. You know what I mean? And the fact that Brunson and Hart are already getting beat up as much as they are, that's not a good sign going into potential second round matchup against the Celtics.
Yeah, exactly. This is scaring me. Please do not disappoint me yet again. That I'm 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 getting calls from people trying to check up on me after this.
Yeah, man. Exactly. So big game tonight. Knicks actually on a big run right now in this game. They opened up a 10-point lead, 23-13, as we're talking here in the first quarter. So Knicks looking pretty good so far. Let's keep our fingers crossed that holds up. And then we'll finish out the show here talking a little NFL draft. But before that, I'm going to give a shout out to our buddy Richard. Hangs out with us every once in a while here. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight, buddy. You want to say hi to Richard, Dan?
Hi, Richard. Also, I just want to say hi to one of our viewers at Avalanche when we meet to a Mets game a couple of weeks ago. Just want to say hi to to one of our viewers. Well met also.
Yeah, shout out to Avalanche too. He's a good, really good guy. He's a big supporter of ours, and he actually has a YouTube channel as well. So go check him out, Avalanche. He's a musician too, a very good one at that. So make sure to check him out. He's got a lot of good stuff on there as well. And Dan also too. So we're gonna wrap up here talking NFL draft. The 2025 NFL draft had a lot of weird things. You know, we'll talk Jets, we'll talk Giants in 1 second, but I did want to get your opinion, Dan. What did you think of all this nonsense involving Deion Sanders' son, Shador, a guy me and you've talked about potentially going to the Giants at number 3? And when we first were talking about this, when the Jets and the Giants were crapping out in October and November and everything, and we were looking ahead, Shador Sanders was the all consensus number 1 overall pick. That didn't end up happening. He dropped all the way to the 5th round when he was taken by the Cleveland Browns. What'd you think of the fall from grace for Shador there, Dan?
Yeah, that is just complete. That is one of the complete shockers in the NFL draft. As you were betting where players were going to end up, man, you lost a shit ton of money. And Shador Sanders has got a real uphill battle, being once again showing up where quarterbacks go to die in Cleveland.
Yeah, man. The Cleveland Browns have chewed up many a quarterbacks over the years and spit them out. You're right about that.
There is a quarterback curse in Cleveland that is I cannot even describe how bad that is, because they go through so many of them, and probably Shador Sanders was like looking like, oh shit, he's got to go through. I got to go through this. Of all places, like probably the worst place I don't think any draft prospect wants to go when they've seen the history of NFL draft prospects in Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, when you see that how quickly they gave up on Baker Mayfield, and now Baker Mayfield is like a franchise quarterback basically in Tampa Bay. They love him down there. And then you see what they did to Deshaun Watson. Now, Deshaun Watson also made quite a few mistakes himself that I'm sure contributed to his downfall and his bad play. But yeah, Cleveland, as you said, is where NFL quarterbacks go to die. And that's coming from a Jet fan, by the way. So let's put that in perspective right there. And speaking of my Jets, we'll get to your Giants in a second, because your Giants definitely had the big moment in the first round there. But real quick on the Jets, they went out and select at number 7 overall, Missouri right tackle Armand Membu. I think it's a good move for the Jets. It solidifies their line. I'm still not going to sit here. You have a lot of people going out there and saying that on paper the Jets have one of the better offensive lines in football. I'm still the type where I'm going to say I'll see it when I'll believe it when I see it. But you got to give the Jets credit. They've made a commitment over the last few years to addressing their offensive line needs through the draft, and they've done that very well. They obviously selected Joe Tippmann. They obviously selected the kid at left tackle last year. Obviously, AVT is still there. So there's still a lot of good on that Jets line that they selected very early on. And I think this kid Armand Membu is going to play pretty well for them.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like they went well. He's gonna have a pretty decent career in the NFL. Of course, the Jets are in a situation where they're undecided where they're going to be a quarterback going forward.
Yeah, well, we know at least this year it's going to be Justin Fields, but that's only basically a 1 year deal. So you are right. And, that's another stupid Jet thing. I'm glad you brought that up too, because the Jets should have, and I think anybody with a brain would have told you how the Jets could have not selected a quarterback in the late rounds of this draft is just insane to me. The Jets went out there, they didn't take any young quarterback or project quarterback or anything like that. And then we've been hearing the Jets build up this young Florida State quarterback they took a couple of years ago, Jordan Travis, and how good he's going to be. And then Jordan Travis, mere days, hours actually, after the NFL draft concludes, announces to the world he is retiring. So the guy that I mean, and believe me, Dan, I hear a lot of these delusional Jet fans. I'm not. I'm a realistic Jet fan. I'm not delusional about my team. And I heard so many Jet fans saying Jordan Travis is the quarterback of the future. He's the guy the Jets need to go and give the opportunity to and give the chance to. Well, Jordan Travis didn't even agree with you because he's done with his NFL career. Unfortunately, too. I don't take any joy in saying that. You don't want to see a young kid's dreams get cut short due to injury. And unfortunately, that's the case. And this is why I took Jordan Travis with a grain of salt his entire time as a Jet, because you never even saw him on the field. I mean, we even heard over the last few months and everything how his rehab was not going well. So how the Jets could not have thought to themselves, hey, maybe we should draft a backup option here. It just goes to show there's still incompetence running through the organization.
Yeah, exactly. They could have gone through maybe a Shador Sanders and had at least a decent job letting him maybe be under maybe under the tutelage of a veteran.
That's a great point too, because I thought the same thing actually. I thought the Jets should pick him, especially when it got to the fourth and the fifth round. I thought the Jets should pick him, but the fact is, Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn didn't have the balls to keep Aaron Rodgers here, which would have given the Jets a chance to really compete this year, and Devontae Adams for that matter. You knew they weren't going to have the balls to pick Shador Sanders because dealing with him and Dion and that whole sideshow, you just knew these guys were not going to have the guts to put themselves in that spot. They don't want to have the spotlight on them at all. They want to fly under the radar, which that's great when you have talent, but I guess we'll see what kind of talent the Jets have. But speaking of talent, Dan, the New York Giants, your New York Football Giants, got a influx of talent courtesy of the first round of the NFL draft this year that you really can't argue with. The Giants really did a great job. At number 3, they turned around and they snatched victory from the jaws of defeat, because a lot of Giants fans could have sat there. A lot of people would have pouted and said, we didn't get the quarterback number 1 overall, who ended up going to Tennessee. We didn't get, what's his name? The Shador's teammate. I forget his name right now. The kid, the corner receiver kid, whatever his name is. He ended up going number 2. You could have sat there and pouted over that, but instead the Giants turned that into a guy who a lot of people have said is the best player in the draft, in Abdul Carter at Penn State. This kid has been dealing with a little bit of a foot injury, so that's something to keep in mind. He is banged up a little bit, so there is a little baggage the Giants are getting, but you can't argue with getting potentially the best player in the draft. We all know the history of the New York Giants, how their defense has continuously set the tone for all eras of their team's success, dating all the way back to LT, to Michael Strahan, to O.C. Umenyiora, to that whole, every time they've won a Super Bowl. Picking Abdul Carter, definitely a big W for the Giants. Before we go on and talk about what else the Giants did in that round, Dan, what are your thoughts on immediately getting Abdul Carter on the Giants D line?
I just feel like this is a game changer with our defense, Abdul Carter. This guy's gonna be explosive with his defense, and I just, I just feel like they made the right move with this, especially with the way the rest of the draft turned out. I really feel like they got to win in this draft as best as they could.
Yeah, I'm with you. They could have. The Giants really had the opportunity to do a lot of things. They could have traded down. They could have really done a lot. But the fact that they hung in there and ended up picking Abdul Carter at number 3, great job by them. You got to give them all the credit in the world. And hey, when you also look at the fact of what they did after that, I was speculating a couple of days prior to the NFL draft that the Giants could pick whoever they want at number 3, whoever falls their way, and then trade back into the first round to select a quarterback. Now, the quarterback that I had said I thought the Giants would pick was Shedeur Sanders. Obviously, that didn't work out. The Giants had much different plans in mind than me. But I was thinking around number 20, the Giants would trade back in. Well, the Giants said, we'll do even better. We'll get an even lower value number 1 pick and still get our quarterback. And that is the Giants trading back in the first round, number 25 for Ole Miss. Does that sound familiar? Quarterback Jackson Dart coming to the Giants. You could not have picked a more perfect situation to put this kid in. He's going to be sitting under the learning tree of Russell Wilson. He's going to be fighting and competing with Jameis Winston for playing time. This kid is put into a great spot, in my opinion, Dan. What are your thoughts on the Giants trading back in and taking Jackson Dart?
I just feel like this is a perfect situation for the Giants. I feel like Jackson Dart's not gonna. I feel like as best as he can, it's not gonna have that pressure because I feel like the Giants have these veteran quarterbacks that are gonna maybe allow him to slowly get build up to play on that high level that he's eventually gonna be taking over as the number 1 quarterback on the team.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the plan. He's going to be, look, we saw even Russell Wilson this year only start a few games for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he didn't even start the season as the quarterback. He ended up getting the job later on when they played the Jets. So, there's a whole different, array of ways the Giants could go about. But the one thing that you really, in my opinion, the Giants really did great is that they brought in 2 QBs that now there isn't going to be really anybody. I mean, I'm sure there'll be some diehard fans suggesting it, but there really isn't going to be many people calling for Jackson Dart to be the week 1 starter. There's no need for this kid to come in and have to worry about being a week 1 starter. And, that's the best thing the Giants could do. Take as much pressure off of him to succeed immediately as possible. Obviously he's going to have to show results at some point, but it doesn't have to be week 1 of his rookie season,
Yeah, exactly. I feel like he's going to be able to get to ease the transition into the NFL a lot better now. He's put into a better situation, and I feel there's like he's just flying under the radar with the fact he's gotten drafted that as low as he did. I feel like they've set themselves up for a situation, and I feel like this is going to be a lot better than what some people think.
I agree. The Giants set themselves up pretty perfectly. You can argue with some of their decisions. You can even argue with the ownership's decision of keeping Daboll around in the first place, even though I'm a big fan of Daboll as a head coach. Not as much of as a GM. Joe Shane, but hey, I think they went out there and had a great draft, and that's all you could ask of them. And you know what, Dan? I think we're not the only ones that think the Giants that did pretty well. Also, our buddy Richard said the Giants did great, and he's thinking Ole Miss. that sauce does pretty good for the Giants, and I think he's right about that. There's that. It makes you feel good. It's almost like it reminds me of the old days where uh, you have just that feeling that this kid's going to come in. There's a familiarity that he's coming in from the same school as obviously a two-time Super Bowl champion with the Giants and Eli Manning. You feel uh, that that connection to him already almost. Like you can't find a Giant fan doesn't like Eli Manning, especially in retrospect. Maybe during his actual career, Giant fans might have gotten sick of Eli Manning, but in retrospect, how could you not like Eli Manning and have to pick a guy from the same school that has that kind of pedigree that makes you feel good?
Yeah, exactly. I just feel like early on, maybe with the Eli, maybe it was a little bit, but I feel like they needed to be patient, and I think Eli showed that he was able to become the quarterback that we all remember him. That's going to be probably eventually going to be in the Hall of Fame, either this upcoming next Hall of Fame induction or the next group. It's inevitable that's going to happen. Eli turned out a lot better. People maybe got a little bit hit the panic button too early on Eli, and I think they regretted hitting that panic button when they saw the fact that he put up all those numbers that he did with the Giants. That guy had some money moments in the playoffs.
Oh yeah, Eli. I mean, look, I'm a Jet fan, and by the way, the O line first round pick. Oh, that's for the Jets too. I'm looking at the chat a little bit too much, but yeah, man. I mean, I'm totally with you. People probably underestimated Eli at first, especially they all had the Philip Rivers Eli comps because those guys ended up getting traded for each other. But at the end of the day, when you look at the resume of the two quarterbacks, I don't even think it's comparable. I was always a big Philip Rivers fan in the way he played, but Eli's resume is just that much better. The guy's got two Super Bowls. Philip Rivers never even appeared in one. That speaks for itself.
Yeah. I just feel like Eli was ready to handle that New York spotlight. I just feel like he was just built different.
Yeah, totally with you. And I also agree with our buddy Richard that Eli should have been first ballot. Say what you
Yeah,
want. You can complain about the guy as much as you want. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, and it's not just because he beat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl twice. There's a litany of reasons why Eli Manning is a first ballot Hall of Famer, and I don't even think it's debatable. I really can't believe the voters didn't put him in.
yeah, exactly, and I just feel like Eli will eventually get in, and
He will.
yeah, he will eventually get in, and I will have to find a way to get to Canton, Ohio for that ceremony. Had to I tell you that I will have to
I
find
hear
a way
you,
to get.
man.
Yeah, I will have to find a way to get there for that when it does happen, and
Maybe we'll be
hopefully it'll.
doing a live BSIT podcast from Canton during the Hall of Fame game when they're doing it that weekend.
Yeah. Maybe they'll let us set up a table or something, right? Right on that little field next to the Hall of Fame. I think you remember I showed you pictures from when I went to the Football Hall of Fame. They had
Yeah,
like this little 50-yard field next to the building. That'd be a perfect
mhm.
spot to do like a little thing on there.
No doubt about it. No doubt about
Like
it.
maybe like they'd have an opening with us trying to trying to throw a touchdown or something. One of us trying to catch a touchdown pass on that 50-yard field.
Yeah, man. And if you want to check out Bobo's trip last year to Canton, Ohio, you can see the whole video on our Patreon, patreon.com/best seat in the house podcast. And we even have a little thing if you don't want to just sign up directly for it. We have a little Bobo package. I think it's like $5 or whatever. That you could buy all the Bobo highlights and everything, in which includes the Hall of Fame trip. So definitely make sure to check that out if you're a fan of the show and a fan of the Hall of Fame too. Very good stuff at a Bobo. And Dan, last thing here too, uh, you know, with the I want to check back on the Knicks now too. The Knicks are up 44-36 with 8:12 left in the first half. JB Bickerstaff, the head coach of Detroit, is having a mental breakdown at half court right now. So I don't know exactly what's going on right now, but I think it's just about that time that me and you call it a day, and we'll catch the rest of the Knicks game. Want to thank everybody for hanging out with us here tonight, especially our buddy Richard here, who's active in the chat. And thanks, man. We appreciate the well wishes. We appreciate the good words, and we appreciate the let's go fucking Mets, because the Mets need to wake up tomorrow and keep it going again. And really, thank you everybody for hanging out with us. Dan, before we get out of here, anything you'd like to plug for yourself?
Sure, my Instagram Bobo7. I'm in my Twitter Bobo103NYC, Instagram Bobo718DK username. It says same username on Shreds, also on YouTube. It's one word, Daniel Curlett, for all your Bobo content on YouTube. There'll be some Bobo stuff on YouTube there, so there for you to see. So be on a lookout for that. So and that's all the plug. Plus, you'll also get a track site bid uploaded soon. I have to go through a lot of stuff. I have to freaking go through at home the last couple of days, my family. But you'll have track site bidded out there. Be talking about all the everything that happened over at Talladega. And no, there wasn't anyone that just was running around the track in his tighty whities that tried that and there was no one that tried to make out with the guy he freaking beat in the photo finish. I'm sorry, it was Talladega. Yeah. I'm sorry. It was just, since the race was at Talladega, I just had to reference that movie.
Definitely a great movie there. Ricky Bobby, Talladega Nights. And yeah, Dan, I think that's going to do it for us here on this edition of Best Seat in the House podcast. I want to thank everybody here for hanging out with us here on this Thursday night, a late week edition of Best Seat in the House. We usually tape on Wednesday nights and put them up on Thursday, but we reconfigured things this week, and we will, however, be back with you on Patreon on Sunday night. So if you want, it's only $5, patreon.com/Best Seat in the House podcast. I want to thank everybody again for hanging out with us. For my co-host, the great Daniel Bobo Curlin, I'm Rob Kramer. This is the Best Seat in the House podcast, everybody, and have a great weekend. Let's go Knicks, and let's go Mets.
That was a good